calories is probably not good. And eat like an adult. I always say, one of the things is, I don't know, like to me, growing up, snack food was something that kids indulged in. Once you hit 18 or so, eat like an adult.
I'm still waiting to learn that lesson. You mentioned Sapolsky there. I had him on the show recently.
Yeah.
What do you think most people misunderstand about stress? Obviously, he's contributed an awful lot to this. I know you've thought about this too.
Yeah.
What do you think people don't understand fully about stress?
Yeah, the findings that I think are overlooked tremendously are the following experiment. There's an experiment in animals where a rat is given the opportunity to run on a treadmill. And rats and rodents of all kinds love running on treadmills. There are these interesting, we'll see who catches this fly first.
Yeah, I'm ready, man.
Yeah. I think, there's even a study from Hoppy Hofstra's lab at Harvard that showed that if you put running wheels in fields, that rodents will run there in the middle of the night and run on them. That's how insanely obsessed with running.
They're just energetic. They want to go.
There's something rewarding about it for them. But in any event, it lowers their blood pressure. It leads to improvements in a number of metrics that you expect. And you see the same thing in humans, right? Who run on a treadmill or run outdoors or swim, cardiovascular exercise. Okay, well, Sapolsky and I love to talk about an experiment where they took two different cages with animals. One is running voluntarily, but then that running wheel is tethered to a running wheel in another cage that encloses an animal, forces it to run every time the other one runs. So forced exercise versus voluntary exercise. And the takeaway is very straightforward. Voluntary exercise leads to all sorts of improvements in health metrics, resting heart rate, blood pressure, blood glucose, resting blood glucose, etc., waking blood glucose. The animal that's forced to exercise, you see the opposite. Right, so it's not exercise per se. It's something about being forced to exercise causes decrements in a number of health metrics. And you see the same thing in humans. So what's wild is my colleague, Dr. Ali Crum, Department of Psychology at Stanford, has done these beautiful experiments. Recently, I've been reading and researching a lot about and did a podcast on tenacity and willpower. And there was this idea early on from Baumeister and colleagues that willpower and tenacity are related to motivation, but they're not quite the same. I think we should think of motivation as as the verb state that moves us from, let's just say, apathy to tenacity. Okay, so it's the verb function that moves us along that continuum. System is one that gets very little coverage, unfortunately. In fact, most neuroscientists aren't aware of what its function is, and it's called the AMCC, which is the anterior midcingulate cortex. Here's where it gets really interesting. I'm going to list off a bunch of peer-reviewed published results in rapid sequence, and I'm happy to point out the substantiation for this, or the references. Okay, individuals that are dieting or resisting some sort of tempting behavior and are successful in doing that, the size and activity in their AMCC goes up over time, and the structure gets bigger. Dieters who fail, where a self-deprivation of food activates excessive reward. And beautifully, and this is two of my favorite results that really bring this around to a protocol or a takeaway, if people are given an easy task, the AMCC isn't activated. If they're given a hard task, in particular a hard task, physical or cognitive, that they really don't want to do, the AMCC levels of activity go through the roof. Classes, but getting their heart rate up to about 65-70% of maximum. So it's getting... The theory that's starting to emerge is that the AMCC isn't just about tenacity and willpower to push through hard things, that it may actually be related to one's will to live, one's will to continue living. And I think and what's interesting about this structure is that it's involved in generating tenacity and willpower for all things, not just for one situation. And what's really wonderful, I think, about the research literature on this is it's so clear what we need to do. We need to do I love those two activities. Well, guess what? Those activities, even if they're hard, like a hard run that I'm really enjoying, or some hard sets in the gym, not going to increase the size or activity of the A reps. Sure, okay, pushing to failure, great. Running hard till your lungs burn, great. But if you enjoy, of course you don't want to do things that are going to damage you psychologically or physically. Of course. But everyone, I believe, would benefit from picking a few micro sucks.
What are some of your micro sucks or macro sucks?
Each dish away as I dirty them up. But so little things, the things like the area, some resistance is to put it into Stephen Pressfield language, or our friend David Goggins, right? This idea that one has to callous the mind. I mean, David said that the day you have this thing that's like an engine that you can devote to other things. So then you can devote the AMCC to other endeavors.
I have this thing I called email anxiety, and it's...
Yeah, someone might. And I think that, you've talked a lot on your show.
I think Parkinson's law is as
preload the deadline by procrastinating, and then that's what, gets their activation energy to a level where they can engage. So I've started thinking about this a lot lately. I love running, but it's interesting. I like to finish at my driveway, and I live on a hill. And actually this morning I was out for a run, and the gate at the end of the cul-de-sac is my sort of designated stop point. So it actually sucked to do the last 20 meters this morning. So there I probably got a little bit of AMCC activation because everything was,